Imagine a kindly, frail old man, seemingly harmless, yet harboring the darkest, most unimaginable desires. A man who could attend a child's birthday party, then abduct and brutally murder them. This was the chilling reality of Albert Fish, a predator who haunted the early 20th century, leaving a trail of unspeakable horror and a legacy that still sends shivers down the spine. Today, we delve into the deeply disturbing world of Albert Fish, often called the Gray Man or Werewolf of Wisteria. We'll explore the traumatic origins of his evil, the dreadful escalation of his crimes against innocent children, the agonizing hunt to identify him, and the bizarre trial that finally brought his reign of terror to an end. It's a journey into the mind of a true monster, a case that exposed the darkest corners of human evil. Born Hamilton Howard Fish in Washington, D.C. in 1870, Albert was the youngest of 4 children. His father died when he was just 5, leading his mother to place him in St. John's Orphanage. This institution would become a crucible of abuse, shaping his twisted psyche. Within the orphanage walls, young Albert was subjected to relentless physical and emotional abuse. He witnessed and endured severe beatings, and it was here that he began to associate pain with pleasure, a disturbing foundation for his future sadomasochistic tendencies. He reportedly found arousal in his own suffering and in watching others suffer. He developed a stammer and bedwetting, but more significantly, his profound perversions began to take root. As he grew, Fish's behaviors became increasingly disturbing. By his teens, he was engaging in self-mutilation and had been introduced to extreme paraphilias like urolagnia and coprophagia. He also suffered a head injury in early life that some believe contributed to his later mental state. While married with 6 children, his bizarre behavior intensified, eventually leading his wife to leave him. He would later be diagnosed with numerous paraphilias, a testament to the extent of his psychological disintegration, and a family history of mental illness suggests a genetic predisposition to his instability. Beyond his external acts of violence, Fish was a master of self-torture. He famously embedded dozens of needles into his groin and abdomen, a discovery made years later through X-rays during his psychiatric evaluation. He engaged in ritualistic self-flagellation and even practiced auto-cannibalism. These acts of extreme self-harm were a private precursor to the horrors he would inflict on others. His internal world of pain and perversion eventually spilled outward. While the exact timeline of his earliest victims remains debated, by the early 1900s, Fish was involved in violent acts, including the mutilation of a mentally disabled boy in 1910. He also had a history of petty crimes and stints in mental institutions, though he was often deemed sane despite his obvious abnormalities. Fish's modus operandi evolved to target the most defenseless, children. He often posed as an elderly, harmless man or offered false promises of work to gain the trust of families. He was known to target children from marginalized communities, believing their disappearances would garner less attention from law enforcement. His crimes were not merely sexual. They were deeply rooted in his sadomasochistic obsessions, often involving prolonged torture before murder and ultimately cannibalism. One of Fish's earliest confirmed victims was 8-year-old Frances McDonald. In July 1924, Frances was last seen entering the woods with an elderly man fitting Fish's description. His body was later found, badly beaten and strangled with his own suspenders, a grim foreshadowing of the horrors to come. 3 years later, in February 1927, 4-year-old Billy Gaffney vanished from his New York City neighborhood. Fish would later confess to his abduction and murder, detailing the gruesome acts he committed against the child. The disappearance of young Billy sent a chill through the community, but the killer remained elusive. The most infamous of Fish's crimes occurred in June 1928, when he met the Budd family through a newspaper ad seeking work for their son, Edward. Posing as Frank Howard, Fish charmed the family and, under the pretense of taking 10-year-old Grace to a birthday party, abducted her. Her disappearance launched a widespread search, but for years, her fate remained a terrifying mystery. Fish's crimes were characterized by an extreme and multifaceted depravity. Beyond the murders, he engaged in widespread pedophilia, boasting of attacking hundreds of children across multiple states. His motives were a horrific mix of sexual gratification, sadomasochistic desire, and a chilling religious delusion that led him to believe his actions were a form of sacrifice to God. What set Fish apart in the annals of true crime was his consistent and confessed practice of cannibalism. After killing his victims, he would often dismember their bodies, cooking and consuming their flesh. His confessions, delivered with a detached, almost clinical tone, detailed these gruesome acts, including the chilling account of how he prepared and ate Gracebud. For decades, Albert Fish evaded capture. His unassuming appearance, coupled with his ability to move between states and his cunning in adopting aliases, allowed him to continue his heinous acts largely unimpeded. The sheer horror and randomness of his crimes made it incredibly difficult for law enforcement to connect the dots. Years after Gracebud's disappearance, her family received an anonymous, handwritten letter in November 1934. The letter, chilling in its detail, described in graphic terms how Grace had been abducted, tortured, murdered, and cannibalized. It was a sadistic taunt, but it also contained a crucial clue that would finally bring Fish down. Detective William King, who had been tirelessly investigating Grace's disappearance, launched a meticulous investigation into the letter. The stationery used, specifically a unique type of blue border, was traced back to a stationery store in New York City. The store ledger revealed the name and address of the purchaser, Albert Fish. The seemingly innocuous letter had unmasked a monster. On December 13, 1934, at the age of 64, Albert Fish was finally apprehended. He was found at his sister's home in New York. Upon his arrest, Fish confessed not only to the murder of Gracebud, but also to the killings of Francis McDonnell and Billy Gaffney and numerous other assaults. His confessions were disturbingly calm and detailed, revealing the true depths of his depravity. Albert Fish's trial in March 1935 was a sensational event. His defense argued insanity, citing his extensive history of self-mutilation, his religious delusions, and his numerous paraphilias. Psychiatrists testified to the extreme nature of his perversions. However, the prosecution argued that despite his obvious mental abnormalities, Fish understood the nature of his actions and knew they were wrong. After a 10-day trial, the jury found Albert Fish guilty of the murder of Gracebud. He was sentenced to death. On January 16, 1936, at 65 years old, Albert Fish was executed by electric chair at Sing Sing Prison, the oldest man to be executed in New York State at that time. His final words were reportedly, "I don't even know why I'm here," a chilling echo of his profound detachment. The case of Albert Fish remains one of the most horrifying in American criminal history. He personified the ultimate betrayal of trust, the unspeakable evil lurking beneath a benign exterior. His crimes forced society to confront the existence of pure, unadulterated depravity and the vulnerability of children. The Gray Man left behind a legacy of terror, forever etched in the annals of true crime as a cautionary tale of a monster driven by unimaginable urges. Have you heard of Albert Fish before? If you're compelled by the chilling psychology behind such crimes, remember to subscribe for more deep dives into notorious cases.